They call him Seatin, the man of legends.
Hey guys, what is up? It is Seatin here. Hello and welcome to my Stonearrow guide for Archeage. Today I'm going to be talking a bit about the Stonearrow spec that I like to use, which is mainly a 1v1 arena spec, and in regards to its functionality, it is brilliant. You can beat pretty much every class in the game if you play well using a Stonearrow. So today we're going to be talking a bit about the build itself, various combos, abilities to use when and why, and all that exciting stuff. So we're going to go through all the skills in each tree and give you a bit of a basic tutorial of how to use them. So Overwhelm, I only use Overwhelm in combination with Stalker's Mark. In combination with Stalker's Mark, it is really good for taking out Primevals, Tricksters, and pretty much any class that doesn't have like a defensive ability up. So for example, when I say defensive ability, I mean something like Redoubt or the Battle Rage ability that gives you like 30% additional parry. Because if they do have those abilities up, it's likely your Overwhelm will miss and then you're in melee range for absolutely nothing. But sort of combined with Stalker's Mark, what it does is not only does it deal 77 additional % damage, but it also trips the target. And not many classes have a way to recover from being tripped, so they can do nothing but be tripped for about 2.3 seconds, and then what you can do is you can go behind them and use a Shadow Smite, and that way they're also shackled, and pretty much that combination alone is a brilliant way to open up on any kind of Primeval or any other really class that is playing with Archery at its core. It's just brilliant for kind of catching them off guard and quickly ensuring that they can do nothing before you quickly burst them down. So that is very awesome. Other abilities you have is Drop Back. Now Drop Back for me is just a way to escape people and ensure that I keep my distance. Now for the majority of opponents, for example when you're fighting melee and dagger spell reaper classes, pretty much the golden rule is to always stay 28 meters away from the target that you are trying to fight. Now I'm basically going to try and demonstrate a few combos on the wolves, but basically the idea is you have a 28 meter range and you want to keep that range. It's really easy to do. The only way that most people can sort of gap close on you is either by using Drop Back and Shadow Step, or by using the Auramancy Teleport and Shadow Step. So just be aware that those are the two ways that people can gap close on you. Now I also have Stealth in this build just due to the fact that when you're doing a lot of 1v1 arena, everybody has stealth really. That's what I found, and if somebody gets the drop on you, especially in Stonearrow, you can die very quickly. So it's important that you also, stealth and try and avoid them while they're stealthing to ensure that you're always starting at maximum range. So for fighting people that have archery, it's not too important being a max ranged, but when you are fighting anybody else, it's really important that you keep that 28 meter distance, or you're going to be pretty damn screwed. Now I have Toxic Shot in this build. This is kind of an optional additional bit of burst damage that you can have, and it combos really well with Piercing Shot, making that deal 27% additional damage. But if I wanted, for example, more survivability or more utility, I could move that point around to say invincibility or get an additional stun or silence from defense. But I find I don't really need any of those abilities, and they're all pretty useless, especially invincibility. A lot of people think it's good. I just think it's a way to waste time in an arena, and it doesn't have much practical use. If it broke out of CC, hell yeah, it would be amazing / the best thing since sliced bread. But since it doesn't, it doesn't really have too much use. So yeah, that's why I personally don't use it. I also have, of course, Free Runner, the movement speed on that 30-second buff, and agility, which is increased. Range damage is just essential to making any kind of archery build work, so you definitely need Free Runner. Shadow Step, I occasionally use this for like naval PvP combat, because you can just teleport behind people on boats, but it's also good for, dealing with other archery classes, getting behind them when they have the Stalker's Mark on, just so you can quickly overwhelm them and then Shadow Smite them, as we've previously talked about. Then if we go into Archery, the actual ability is the Overcharge Bolt. This is just amazing. It's a slow, it deals a lot of damage, and it says this skill always hits. However, that is in fact a lie. It does not always hit, and it also deals additional damage on stun targets, so that's something to bear in mind. You know, after you've overwhelmed somebody and Shadow Smited them, if you can get a quick charge bolt off, then that will deal additional damage, which is pretty damn cool. You then have Piercing Shot. Now, basically, every time you use Endless Arrows, you have a small chance to generate a stack of something called Bloodthirst. As you can see, I've got it on me now. Now, the more Bloodthirst that you have, the harder Piercing Shot will hit. So you can either kind of like use this ability off cooldown, or if you want to combo it for a really, really hard hit, maybe when the target is vulnerable, they've got their defensive abilities off cooldown, you know, you can have 20 stacks of that. Also using ability called Intensity means that you generate stacks faster. So what happens is you can Toxic Shot, Piercing Shot, and that can deal an absolutely lethal blow to the enemy, which can just totally knock them out. So yeah, that's an interesting combo to bear in mind. Of course, you have Endless Arrows, your standard spam attack. Double Recurve, which is a 30-minute buff you should always have on yourself, increases range damage by 15%. Snare. Now, Snare isn't actually for the snare. An important part of this ability, which a lot of people miss off, is the fact that it removes the shackle debuff from the caster. Now, I don't know why, but every archery class I've faced just doesn't have Snare in at all, and it's so good for removing the shackle. Like, literally, you just use it, and boom, the shackle is gone. And it also reduces the damage that you take by 20% for 3 seconds. So not only does it actually you know, remove a shackle, but it also reduces the damage you take for a very small amount of time. So it's 20% for 3 seconds, and it can also snare people if they're in melee range of you, but it's a good way for dealing with the shackle regardless. So that's the main functionality of that. Boneyard. Now, Boneyard has 2 functions. One is to allow you to gain more distance on a melee opponent. So for example, let's just, you know, do the Starving Wolf here. So Starving Wolf, you know, he's catching up to me, I'm maybe, you know, fucking up, kiting, and then he gets fairly close, so I just boneyard him, see he's imprisoned, and then what I can do is I can get my range back. Ideally, you want to make sure before you use boneyard that you have a piercing shot on them, just so that they can't stealth while in the boneyard, and then, you know, maybe get the creep on you after it breaks. So that's just a bit of a pro tip and something to bear in mind. And then you have intensity, so this increases your range critical hit rate for 15 seconds and grants additional Bloodthirst for every basic bow attack. It also grants immunity for fear, which is amazing for dealing with anybody playing a witchcraft spec. So for example, Trickster, Dagger Spell, Shadow Blade, you know, this is the brilliant counter to any of their fear abilities. And in the passives, we have Wild Instincts, which is an 8% movement speed. We have Marksman, 5% additional range on all of your skills. Sharpshooting, which is 3% additional critical damage, and 3% chance to crit, and 20% additional critical damage. And finally, Feral Claws, which is an all-around 15% damage increase to your archery skills. So those passives are fairly solid. I mean, you could argue that you could sort of maybe swap Sharpshooting for evasion if you want a slightly higher chance to evade, but generally with the defense skills that I'm going to talk about, you don't really need that too much. Now, the first thing I have is Refreshment. That is a nice chunk of additional health, which I think is well worth the investment. It's almost 2k health for just 1 point, and it just makes you look pretty damn intimidating. So I definitely suggest getting that. Now, Boastful Roar is basically your metal burner, so every time you take like 1 damage, you get 1 stack of metal, and that stacks up to 3,000 times. Now, using this Boastful Roar will usually instantly deal between sort of 2.5k and 5k damage in arena, providing you have 3,000 stacks of metal, so that is just amazing burst. You have to be fairly close to the target, so it's kind of like a get off me melee move, and it also also reduces the enemy's movement speed by 45% and skill damage by 20% for 7 seconds. And that is just an awesome way to, widen that gap between you and a melee player. And also reduce the damage that they do if they are sort of in melee range and are getting hits on you. The final thing really is redoubt combined with supplemental block. So redoubt basically is a buff that you can put on yourself for 20 seconds. It increases block rate by 38%. Bear in mind it does have one slight penalty, which is decreasing your movement speed by 10%, but you're still going to be at roughly the same speed of anybody else, providing that you have the Wild Instincts passive. Now, redoubt is just so good, 38% block. It also prevents being pushed or knocked down, which is just amazing for dealing with anybody with battle rage at their core. For example, Dark Runners and Shadow Blades. They cannot knock you down, and that is very, very awesome. So you have that ability, which gives you a huge chunk of block, and then you also have supplemental block, which, providing that you've blocked at least once, will continue to block, which kind of ups your overall block rate to about 55%, combined with your other evasion. While you have redoubt up, you pretty much have like a 70% chance to block, parry, evade, dodge. So it's pretty damn awesome that you have all the mitigation provided by that. And it's fairly straightforward to play. It does take a bit of practice, but I'd say in comparison to Dagger Spell and Shadow Blade that this is one of the much easier classes to master. You just have to get really good at kiting and learn not to backpedal, and you will have an absolute blast with this spec. So I'm going to be uploading some Stonearrow PvP videos of 1v1 with a bit of a commentary to explaining how I deal with people, but that is pretty much it for the guide and overview of abilities. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching, and have a wonderful day.